The number I couldn't stop thinking about was $4,200. That's how much I wired the afternoon my parents disappeared. Not borrowed. Wired. No paperwork, no promissory note, no question about when it would come back. Just a transfer confirmation at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, and a text from my mother that said, "Thank you, sweetheart, you saved us." They were gone by Friday. Not gone the way people say when they mean someone stopped returning calls. Gone the way a house goes quiet when the people inside it have been planning something for a long time, and you were the last one to know. Welcome back to Family Revenge Stories New, the channel where quiet people keep the receipts and family learns that love does not mean unlimited credit. If stories about documents, dignity, and the exact moment someone stops subsidizing their own betrayal speak to you, drop a comment and hit subscribe. I'm going to tell you everything. My name is Alice. I am 34-year-old. I'm a forensic accountant. I have been one for 11 years. Before that, I was a staff auditor at a regional firm in the Midwest, learning that the story money tells is almost always truer than the story people tell. Numbers don't get tired of lying. People do. Eventually, the ledger and the narrative stop matching, and that gap, that specific measurable gap, is where the truth lives. I mention this not as a credential. I mention it because it's the reason I survived what I'm about to describe. My family had spent decades operating on the assumption that I would absorb costs without calculating them. My job had trained me, quietly and without their knowledge, to do exactly the opposite. My parents, Robert and Della, were the kind of couple that smaller communities build a mythology around. Dad was a contractor who had done well in the 90s and coasted on the reputation since. Mom was the social architect of every room she entered, warm in the specific way that makes people feel chosen, and that feels like something else entirely once you understand the mechanics of it. They had 2 children. My brother Marcus, who had my father's name in people's mouths and my mother's number in his phone, and me, Claire. The one who showed up. The one who handled things. The one who, for most of my adult life, believed that being indispensable was the same thing as being loved. I lived 45 minutes away. Marcus lived 3 time zones away, and might as well have lived on the moon for all the practical difference it made. I was the one who drove my mother to her cardiology appointments. I was the one who called the contractor when the gutters pulled away from the fascia in January. I was the one who noticed when the credit card statements my father left on the kitchen counter had balances that didn't match the income he described. I noticed because it's what I do. I filed it the way I filed most things about my family, undercomplicated rather than concerning. The $4,200 was not the first wire. It was the 7th in 3 years, totaling $31,400 across transfers. I kept in a private spreadsheet that I had never shown anyone. Each time the story was different. A gap between a contract payment and a materials invoice. A medical bill that the insurance had denied pending appeal. A tax liability that needed to be addressed before the deadline. Each time I wired the money. Each time I told myself this was what family meant. Each time I opened the spreadsheet and updated the running total the way you update a document you intend to use someday, without fully admitting to yourself what you're preparing for. $31,400. At natural pace, I could say that number in about 2 seconds. Takes considerably longer to earn it. I called my mother at 7 p.m. the Saturday after the transfer. No answer. I called my father. Voicemail. I texted both. Read receipts. No replies. By Sunday I had called 4 more times. By Monday I had driven to the house. The car was gone. The mail had piled up. The lights were on a timer, which I recognized from the last time they'd gone somewhere without telling me. A long weekend in Branson 3 years ago that I discovered the same way, by showing up. I had not registered that as a pattern. I registered it now. The spare key was under the ceramic turtle by the back door, where it had been for 22 years. I let myself in. The house smelled the way houses do when no one has been in them for several days, still slightly sealed. The kitchen was clean. The coffee maker was unplugged. 2 suitcases were missing from the hall closet. I stood in the kitchen for a moment. Then I went to the office. My father's desk was clear in a way that I recognized, not as tidy but as cleared. The shallow drawer where he kept the folder of current financial documents was empty. I photographed the empty drawer on my phone. I don't know why I did it immediately. I hadn't decided anything yet. The habit just came. Document what you see. Date it. Don't interpret yet. Just record. I walked through the house. Everything else was normal. Then I reached their bedroom closet. The closet was deep and L-shaped, and along the far wall, behind a row of my father's work shirts, was a cardboard box I had never seen before. It was not hidden exactly. It was simply in the place where things get put when people believe no one looks carefully. It was labeled in my mother's handwriting, Misk. I opened it. Inside, 3 manila envelopes, a spiral notebook, a stack of printouts rubber-banded together, and a real estate brochure for a property I did not recognize. The brochure was for a small lake house in another state, 140 miles away. The asking price, printed in the corner in blue ink, was $187,500. I sat down on the edge of the bed with the box in my lap. I did not move for a long time. They came home 9 days later. During those 9 days I had done 3 things. I had retained an attorney, a woman named Patricia who had handled a financial matter for me professionally 2 years earlier, and who picked up her phone on the first ring when I called. I had engaged a title search firm to run the address from the brochure. And I had gone through the notebook and the manila envelopes with the same forensic attention I would have given a client file, which is to say, completely, without sympathy, and without allowing myself to land on a conclusion before the evidence finished speaking. What the notebook contained was a planning log. My mother kept it in her precise grade school teacher handwriting. It covered 14 months. It documented discussions with a real estate agent named Gary R. 3 visits to the lake house property, a conversation with a lender about qualification without my father's name on the loan, and a cash flow projection that included a line item labeled C contributions that accounted for $28,000 of the $31,400 I had wired. C contributions. There I was. A line item. A resource allocation in someone else's retirement plan. The manila envelopes contained the following: a quote for a dock repair at the lake house, a deposit confirmation for $5,000 placed on the property 14 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the last wire I sent, and a draft letter to my father's existing mortgage servicer indicating intent to sell the family home. The title search came back on day 6. The lake house had been purchased. Closing had occurred 11 days before my parents disappeared. 3 days before I wired the $4,200. My parents had been homeowners of a lake property in another state for 11 days before my mother texted me, "You saved us." I saved the title search document to my desktop. I looked at the closing date for a long time. October 14th. I had wired $4,200 on October 17th. I printed everything. I labeled everything. I built a folder. Patricia called me on day 8 with information I had not asked for but that she had found anyway, because good attorneys look at the whole field. My maternal grandmother, Irene, had passed away 22 months prior. I had attended the funeral. I had brought food to the reception. I had sat with my aunt in the church hallway and listened to her cry. What I had not known, what no one had told me, was that Irene's estate had included a promissory note. A note that named my parents as debtors. A note in the amount of $44,000, representing funds Irene had lent them in 2016 for a business venture of my father's that had not materialized. The note was dated, witnessed, and recorded with the county clerk. At the time of Irene's death, the principal plus accrued interest totaled $51,200. The estate, modest as my grandmother had been modest, had passed through probate. There was a will. The will distributed Irene's assets among her 3 children, one of whom was my mother. 1/3 of the promissory note, as an estate asset, had gone to each sibling. My mother's siblings, my Aunt Patrice and my Uncle Gerald, still held their shares. They had not forgotten. My mother had. Patricia sent me the documents in a secure folder that evening. I opened each one slowly, the way you read something when you understand that the thing you're reading is changing the shape of the story you thought you were in. I read each document twice. Then I read them a 3rd time. Then I made a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table and looked at my hands. My parents arrived home on a Thursday. I know this because I was parked 1 street over, and I watched my father pull the car into the driveway. I did not stop them. I did not knock on the door. I had an attorney, a folder, and an appointment. Those are better tools than a confrontation on a driveway. Marcus called me the following Sunday. He called from a number I didn't recognize, which meant he borrowed someone's phone, which meant he already knew I wasn't taking his calls. Mom says you've been acting weird, he said. Tell me what weird looks like from where you are, I said. He was quiet for a moment. She says you haven't called. I called, I said. 11 times over 9 days. You can see the log if you'd like. He said something about how I was always the dramatic one and how this was exactly the kind of thing that made the holidays impossible. I let him finish. Then I said quietly, "When's the last time you sent them money, Marcus?" Another silence. That's not. I'm not asking to start something, I said. I'm just curious about the number. He didn't have one. He hung up. 2 days later my mother knocked on my apartment door. She was wearing the blue coat she wore when she meant to seem reasonable. She came in and sat down and looked around my living room with the expression of a person who has prepared for a conversation and would prefer to have the prepared version. "I want to explain the lake house," she said. "Okay," I said. "We were going to tell you. We just needed to get through the closing first, because you know how your father gets when things feel uncertain, and we didn't want to." "What was the $4,200 for?" I said. She paused. "Moving expenses." "The closing was October 14th, I said. "You asked for the money on October 17th. You haven't moved yet." She recalibrated. I watched her do it, the small recalibration that happens when someone realizes the person across from them has read the file. "We needed to cover a gap," she said. "You've needed to cover a lot of gaps," I said. $31,400 worth of gaps, over 3 years. "Claire, I don't need you to explain," I said. "I have a meeting next week. I'd like you to come. You and Dad both." She agreed. She left. I did not offer her tea. After she was gone, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the folder. I had organized it the way I organize every file, chronologically with a cover sheet with each document labeled by date and type. The $4,200 wire confirmation was behind a tab labeled Transfer 7. It was a very clean folder. It was the cleanest thing in the room. If you've ever watched someone spend 9 days at a lake house while you worried about them, and then watch them come back and call you dramatic, you already know where this is going. Stay with me. The folder has more pages. Patricia had arranged the meeting at her office. Conference room. Long table. The kind of room that does not allow for loose language. My parents arrived 7 minutes late, which was something my mother did when she wanted to arrive after the room had settled. They sat across from me. My father looked at the table. My mother looked at me with the expression she used when she had decided to be patient with someone who was overreacting. Patricia introduced herself and explained the purpose of the meeting in plain language. We were there to discuss a series of financial transfers, an outstanding promissory note, and the implications of both. My mother said, "I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Family helps each other." Patricia said, "The promissory note made to Irene Marsh in 2016 for $44,000. Are you aware that it's been held in probate as an estate asset and distributed to her surviving children?" My mother's expression did not change, but something shifted in it. The patient version disappeared and something that looked more like stillness replaced it. "That was Irene's business," my mother said. "She never called it in. She passed away before she had the opportunity," Patricia said. "Her estate did not forgive the debt. The note transferred." My father looked up from the table for the first time. "Patrice and Gerald have been very patient," Patricia continued. "They retained counsel last month." My mother turned to look at my father. That look, I had seen it my whole life, the look that meant fix this. He absorbed it the way he always had, by looking slightly to the left of the problem. "This is a family matter," my mother said, and she looked at me. "I don't know why you're involving lawyers in a family matter." "You involved a real estate agent," I said. "You involved a lender. You involved a title company. You involved a closing attorney. The paperwork was there before I was. We were going to pay you back." "When?" She opened her mouth. She closed it. Mom, I said. I have the notebook. The room went quiet in a particular way. Not the quiet of confusion. The quiet of a calculation completing. The planning notebook, I said. The one behind the work shirts. 14 months of notes, including a line item labeled C contributions that accounts for $28,000 of what I sent you. I did not raise my voice. I slid a single page across the table. A photocopy of that page with the line item circled in blue ink. I'm listed as a funding source. My father stood up. Now wait a minute. Sit down, Robert, Patricia said. Not unkindly. Professionally. He sat. My mother looked at the circled line for a long time. Then she looked at me. Her expression had moved through several things and landed somewhere I hadn't seen before. Not guilt exactly, but the look of someone who has been read accurately by someone they had underestimated, and who is deciding what to do with that. You were always going to be taken care of, she said, and I recognized the sentence immediately, because I had been hearing versions of it my whole life. It was the sentence that meant stop asking questions. I know, I said, and I slid the second document across the table. It was a letter. One page, handwritten in my grandmother Irene's deliberate cursive, dated 8 months before she died. It had been in the second manila envelope, beneath the dock repair quote. I had not known it was there until I'd read through everything carefully the third time through. It was addressed to no one specific. Irene wrote the way she did everything practically without performance. She wrote that she loved her daughter. She wrote that she had lent the money because she believed in family, and because she understood difficulty. She wrote that she had kept records because she also believed that love without accounting was just a word people used when they wanted something for free. And then she wrote, in the second-to-last paragraph, the ones who show up deserve to know what they showed up for. Don't let the showing up get taken for granted by the ones who didn't. I had read that line perhaps 40 times by that point. It landed differently in that room, with my mother's hands flat on the table and my father looking at the window, than it had when I'd read it alone in my kitchen. It landed the way things land when they were always true but only just became visible. My mother's eyes filled. She did not let them spill. She was her mother's daughter that way at least. She didn't mean for you to use it like this, she said. She kept records, I said. She meant for me to have the information. What I do with it was always going to be up to me. My father said very quietly, What do you want, Claire? I want a structured repayment agreement for the $31,400, I said. Signed today, notarized, with a payment schedule that Patricia will hold. And I want you to resolve the promissory note with Aunt Patrice and Uncle Gerald within 90 days, because they've been patient long enough, and because Grandma kept records of that too. My mother looked at me for a long time. And the lake house, she said, is yours, I said. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm trying to stop giving things away. My father signed first. His hand was unsteady. My mother signed second, cleanly, the way she did things when she had decided to accept an outcome and move forward. As she signed, she said without looking up, I didn't think you'd ever push back. I know, I said. I picked up the folder. I stood up. She would have though, I said. And I left the room. The repayment agreement structured 12 payments over 14 months. The first came on time. The second came 4 days late with a text from my mother explaining that the moving expenses had been higher than expected. I did not respond to the explanation. I logged the payment and the date. The lake house closed in my parents' names. They live there now as far as I know. My mother sends occasional photographs of the water. I do not respond to the photographs, but I do not block them either. That is the current state of the ledger between us. My father called me 3 months after the meeting. He didn't say much. He said he was sorry. He said he hadn't understood fully what had been happening. I believed the second part less than the first, but I acknowledged both. I told him to take care of himself. I meant it. He is 67 years old and he has made a long series of choices about what to absorb and what to pass along. He will continue making those choices without my money underwriting them. Marcus sent me a voice message in November. He said he'd talked to Mom and that I should know the family was worried about me. I saved the voice message because old habits are hard to break, And because someday I may need to demonstrate, calmly and with documentation, that the concern being expressed was specifically about my behavior, and not about any of the behavior that had preceded it. I hope I never need it. I keep it anyway. Aunt Patrice called me after the note was settled. She cried a little. She said Irene had always believed I would figure it out, and that she had left the letter in the envelope because she wanted it to find its way to the right person at the right time. I told Patrice that it did, that it had been in a box behind a row of work shirts, and that it had found me exactly when it needed to. The letter lives in a fireproof box in my closet now. It is in a sleeve behind the repayment agreement and the title search and the transfer confirmation from October 17th. I do not look at it often. I know what it says. I know what it means. $31,400. Recovered across 14 months. Promissory note of $51,200, including interest, settled with Patrice and Gerald from the proceeds of the family home sale, which happened in March. Clean. Final. Documented. I did one other thing with the first repayment check. I did not keep it. I donated it to a legal aid organization that helps people navigate probate and estate documents, the kind of people who don't know what a promissory note is or what a recorded instrument means, and who find out too late that someone had kept records they never knew about. That was the right thing to do with the money. Irene would have agreed. She kept receipts. She understood that the record was the protection, not the confrontation. I learned that from her. I just learned it late. There is a version of this story where I am angry. I have felt that version. I have sat with it at my kitchen table at 11 p.m. with a cup of tea going cold beside me, and I have felt exactly how much it costs to spend years being the one who shows up, the one who wires the money, the one who drives to the cardiology appointment, and to realize that somewhere in that arrangement someone was keeping a notebook and calling you a line item. But anger is expensive. It's not the right tool for every job. Sometimes the right tool is a repayment agreement, notarized and dated, held by an attorney who picks up the phone on the first ring. Sometimes the right tool is your grandmother's handwriting, which says the quiet part plainly. The ones who show up deserve to know what they showed up for. She was right. She kept the receipts. I kept hers. If this reminded you that you are allowed to stop subsidizing the story someone else is telling about your generosity, that quiet people keep receipts and that love without accounting is just a word people use when they want something for free, take that with you. Update what needs updating. Make the call. Sign the document. Drop a comment below and tell me which part of this hit. Hit subscribe and I will see you in the next one.